Have you ever had your whole reality collapse in a single sentence? One line so casually spoken that you almost miss the bomb hidden inside it. That's how it happened for me. One ordinary Thursday, standing in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and burnt toast, I heard words that ripped through the illusion of my marriage and left me staring at a truth so twisted, so bizarre that even now I struggle to wrap my head around it. The line was this: "Oh, you must be the other guy." And it didn't come from my wife. It came from her twin sister. But let me back up, because you need the full picture to understand how insane this was. My wife, let's call her Sarah, was always the kind of person who could look you dead in the eye and make you believe anything. She had this disarming calm about her, this way of tilting her head and smiling at just the right moment, like she was pouring honey into your ears. For years I ate it up. Every excuse, every promise, every late-night reassurance that I just needed to trust her. She said it so often that the phrase itself started to lose meaning. Trust me, trust me, trust me. Like a mantra, like a shield. And I did trust her. God, I wanted to believe that the late nights at work really were late nights at work. That the way she flinched when her phone buzzed was just stress. That the sudden distance between us was just the ebb and flow of marriage. She told me, straight-faced, that my suspicions were the problem, that I was projecting, overthinking, smothering her with doubt. So I swallowed it all. I buried my instincts under her words, and told myself I was lucky to have a woman so patient with my insecurities. Then came the night. Everything tilted sideways. She invited me over to her parents' house for dinner. Her whole family would be there, she said. I'd been through dozens of these evenings before. The same long table, the same roast chicken, the same awkward jokes from her dad. But this time when I walked through the door, it wasn't Sarah who greeted me first. It was her identical twin, Emily. Now Emily and I never really got along. Not because of anything she did, more because Sarah always seemed to keep us at arm's length. She'd joke that two of her was too much for me to handle, and I laughed it off. But I always got the sense she didn't want us talking too much without her there. That night though, Sarah was still upstairs getting ready, so Emily answered the door. She looked at me, smiled faintly, and said, "Oh, you must be the other guy." At first I thought I'd misheard. I laughed nervously, waiting for her to correct herself. But she did. She just stood there, tilting her head the same way Sarah did, that same honeyed calm. Except this time it was laced with something sharp. My stomach dropped. "What did you just say?" I asked. She blinked, realizing her mistake too late, and backpedaled. "Nothing. I meant, never mind." But the damage was done. That single sentence slammed together all the puzzle pieces I'd been trying to force apart. The late nights, the secrecy, the guilt-tripping about trust. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was confirmation, straight from her own I barely made it through dinner. Sarah sat across from me, chatting, smiling, squeezing my hand under the table like everything was fine. Meanwhile, I replayed Emily's words over and over. The other guy. Not a guy. Not someone else. The other guy. That meant more than one. That meant a rotation. That meant I wasn't just competing with some faceless stranger in the shadows. I was one name on a list. When we got home, I couldn't hold it in. I asked her point blank what Emily meant. She froze, then launched into a tirade. How dare I twist her sister's words? How dare I accuse her, after all the time she'd told me to trust her? She was furious, indignant, acting like the victim. And for a moment I almost caved. Almost believed I'd imagined it. That's the power she had over me. She could make me doubt my own ears. But then I remembered the look on Emily's face when she said it. That slip wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misstep. It was truth leaking out. And I realized, sitting there with Sarah's voice rising higher and higher, that I couldn't rely on her for answers. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to get it myself. So I started digging. Not in the obvious ways. Going through her phone, checking her messages. She'd have expected that. She was too smart to leave crumbs lying around. Instead, I watched. I listened. I paid attention to patterns. Who she mentioned casually. Who she avoided talking about. The places she said she was going and the times they didn't line up with reality. I noticed she had a second email account she never used around me. I noticed she always kept her gym bag packed, even on days she didn't work out. And slowly the shape of it emerged. There wasn't just one man. There were at least two. Maybe more. One was a co-worker, someone she'd met during late projects. Another was an old friend from college, and from the way Emily slipped up, there might have been others. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her cover, her decoy, her alibi. The betrayal cut deeper because of who revealed it. Her twin, family, someone who looked exactly like her, who shared her smile, her voice, her DNA. It was like being betrayed twice at once, by the woman I married, and by the shadow version of her standing right in front of me. But here's where it gets stranger. Emily didn't stay quiet. A week later she called me. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't meant to blurt it out, but she couldn't stand watching her sister lie to me anymore. She told me things I didn't want to hear, details that made my skin crawl, places, dates, names. The picture she painted was worse than anything I could have imagined, and as much as it destroyed me, it also gave me something I hadn't had in months. Clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was right. The question then became, what do I do with this truth? Do I confront Sarah with Emily as my witness? Do I blow it all open in front of the family? Do I walk away quietly, letting them both drown in their own mess? That's the turning point. That's where the story really begins to spiral. Because the moment I decided to use what I knew, everything shifted. The lies unraveled faster than I could have predicted, and the fallout reached farther than just my marriage. It pulled in family loyalties, friendships, even business ties, and the deeper it went, the more I realized this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the way people protect lies when the truth threatens to burn them too. That's where part 2 begins. The confrontation, the shocking way her own twin became both my unexpected ally and the spark that blew the whole thing up. The night I finally confronted Sarah, it wasn't some Hollywood blow-up with shouting and plates shattering. I'd rehearsed that kind of scene in my head 100 times, but when the moment actually came, it was quiet, almost calculated. I'd spent weeks gathering myself, letting the anger harden into something colder, sharper. And the truth is, she'd underestimated me. She thought I'd either keep swallowing her trust me speeches, or explode and make myself look like the problem. She didn't expect me to come armed with her twin sister's words, her own patterns, and the kind of patience she had never seen in me before. I chose a Sunday evening. We were both home, no work distractions, no excuses for her to suddenly run off to yoga or coffee with a friend. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd once talked about buying our first house, about kids, about building a future together. This time, my phone sat between us like a loaded weapon. I didn't start with accusation. I started with a question that had been rotting in my chest since Emily let it slip. How many of us are there? She blinked, confused, trying to play innocent. What do you mean? She asked. Her tone sweet, rehearsed, but her eyes flickered, just for a second, and I knew I had her cornered. So I leaned forward and said, Emily told me. It was like watching glass crack. Her face went pale, her lips trembled, and for once she didn't have a script ready. She whispered, "What did she say?" And I laid it out. Not everything, not the full arsenal, just enough to show her I knew that her own twin had mistaken me for the other guy, that I wasn't blind, that her game was over. She broke down fast, like a dam bursting. Tears, apologies, excuses tumbling out in a mess. She swore it wasn't what it looked like, that she hadn't meant for it to go so far, that she felt trapped between who she was and who she wanted to be. She used words like confused and lonely and disconnected, trying to turn her betrayal into some philosophical crisis instead of what it really was. Deliberate choices she'd made, over and over, behind my back. And then came the part that burned the most. She admitted, Emily was right, that there wasn't just one guy, that there had been two, sometimes overlapping, sometimes not, that I'd been right to feel distance, right to feel her slipping away, but wrong to believe it was my fault. And hearing it, even though I already knew, was like being punched in the gut. I asked her why she kept telling me to trust her, why she made me feel like I was paranoid for noticing. She said she thought if she convinced me I was the problem, I'd stop asking questions, but it was easier to gaslight me than to face what she was doing. That word gaslight, she didn't use it, but I did. I said, "You made me question my own sanity just so you could keep lying." She didn't deny it, she just sobbed harder. But here's the part I'll never forget. In the middle of all that, she got angry. Not at herself, but at Emily. She screamed that her twin had betrayed her, that she had no right to interfere, that family was supposed to protect family. And that's when I realized how twisted the whole thing really was. She wasn't sorry for betraying me. She was sorry for being exposed. The days that followed were chaos. Emily called me apologizing again, saying she hadn't meant to start a war, but couldn't keep watching me live in ignorance. My parents got involved when word trickled out, horrified that one son's marriage had collapsed, and the other son's daughter-in-law had dragged the family name into scandal. Friends took sides. Some believed me instantly. Some clung to Sarah's sob story, insisting I'd been too controlling, but I didn't care anymore. I had the truth. Sarah moved out within a week. She stayed with one of the men at least for a while. Emily told me later that it didn't last, that he realized quickly she was a storm he couldn't contain. The other guy, he ghosted her completely once the mess spilled into the open. She thought she had options, a safety net, but the moment the secret was out, the web collapsed, leaving her standing alone. And me, I rebuilt, slowly, painfully, but with a clarity I'd never had before. I reconnected with old friends, told them the full story without shame. I threw myself into work, into fitness, into rediscovering who I was outside of her shadow. For the first time in years, I wasn't second-guessing every thought, every instinct. I wasn't asking if I was crazy. I wasn't begging someone to reassure me. I had proof. I had freedom. The strangest part, though, was Emily. We talked more in those months than we ever had before. Not romantically. God, no. But as two people who'd been caught in Sarah's orbit, both burned by it in different ways. She confessed she'd always hated covering for her, that she felt like she was lying by omission every time she looked me in the eye. And I realized then how far Sarah's web stretched. She wasn't just lying to me. She was forcing everyone around her to live inside her lie too. Looking back, the hardest pill to swallow wasn't the cheating itself. It was how long I let trust me override my own gut. How often I silenced myself just to keep the peace. How I mistook her manipulation for love. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Trust isn't just given, it's earned, every day, in small consistent ways. And once someone weaponizes it against you, once they use your loyalty as a shield for their deceit, it's not trust anymore, it's control. She told me to trust her, and I did, but in the end it wasn't her I should have trusted. It was myself, my instincts, my observations, my gut, because deep down, I knew, and if her twin hadn't slipped up, maybe I'd still be living in that fog. But one careless sentence, "Oh, you must be the other guy," was all it took to turn suspicion into truth, and truth into liberation.